Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy 2023. And welcome to another episode of the Lunatics Radio Hour podcast. I'm Abby Brinker, sitting here with Alan Kudan.
Hello.
That was an excellent hello.
Thank you.
Has fresh energy to it.
I've been working on it.
I think it paid off. And today we are talking about the history of found footage horror films. Before we get into it, I do have one announcement. This is the final week to vote for your favorite horror films of 2022. If you missed it, we had put out nominations last year in different categories of all of the great horror, thriller, sci-fi films that were made last year. And now the final votes are open. So now is your chance.
See, I like polls that go into January. What if somebody releases a movie on December 31st?
That's why we waited. And Violent Night came out at the end of last year that everybody seems to really like.
It's like the stupid Spotify Wrapped that just like cuts off after
in the middle
Halloween.
of the year. Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing?
Stupid.
I did read something that it makes sense just because otherwise there's a huge percentage of users where their entire music listening profile would be jaded by Christmas music.
It would be all Mariah Carey. Yeah, that makes sense.
We don't talk about her in this household.
So I will have the link if you want to vote. And it's more so we're just curious what horror everybody really liked that was released in 2022. So if you want to vote, the link will be in the description of this podcast. It's also available on all of our social media platforms. And also, if you are a writer and you have any interest at all in submitting short stories for our Lunatics Library episodes this year, we have a new, very seamless, hopefully, workflow in place for that. So please get in touch. We would love to feature your work on the podcast. And we have themes worked out pretty far in the future so that you can have more time, more lead time to write your work. So reach out to us at filmsaboutlunatics@gmail.com to be added to that mailing list, and we'll get you all up to speed on the new system.
Did you hear that? Our workflow is seamless.
And if you are anybody at all who maybe you don't identify as a writer, but you have had a paranormal or an unexplained experience or a really scary experience, we would also like to feature your story on the podcast. So again, please reach out to us at filmsaboutlunatics@gmail.com. But let's dive into today's sources. Of course, as always, we used Wikipedia and IMDb, as well as watching a lot of found footage films. Alan especially watched a lot. There's also a Collider article by Dave Trumbore, The Blair Witch Project Effect, a Bloody Disgusting article by Louise H.C., The Evolution of Found Footage Horror, a TOR.com article by Emily Ruth Verona, 8 Incredible Examples of Epistolary Horror, Film School Rejects article by Emily Cuban-Canick, Creep shows unsettling the audience makes a more memorable scare, a CBR article by Timothy Donahue, 10 years ago, Paranormal Activity changed horror movies.
Wait, Paranormal Activity is the staple?
Well, that was just one of the sources that I read was about that film.
I mean, it did.
It definitely had its moment for sure, but a lot of found footage films kind of had milestone moments in history.
Yeah, Blair Witch.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Blair Witch, don't you worry.
That's the important one.
When we talk about found footage horror, movies like The Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, VHS, Cloverfield, Creep, The Visit come to mind, right?
Especially The Visit. Why would that be on the list?
You don't think, well, it's kind of like a recent Hollywood example that was directed by a really well-known director.
Who directed it?
You don't know who directed The Visit?
No.
M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, he's good.
Oh, yeah.
He's the guy that did the Devil.
Yeah, he's known for Devil. Yeah, for sure. Though the genre predates film history, it's often rooted within the horror category. So first, let us define what found footage is. And to kick things off in the new year right, we're going to quote from Wikipedia, and this is from the found footage page on Wikipedia. Quote, found footage is a cinematic technique in which all or a substantial part of the work is presented as if it were discovered film or video recordings. The events on screen are typically seen through the camera of one or more of the characters involved, often accompanied by their real-time off-camera commentary. For added realism, the cinematography may be done by the actors themselves as they perform, and shaky camera work and naturalistic acting are routinely employed. The footage may be presented as if it were raw and complete, or as if it had been edited into a narrative by those who quote-unquote found it, end quote. But Alan, did you know that we can trace this style of horror back before even the first film was made.
Yeah, IMDb.
No. An epistolary novel
Epistolary?
Uh-huh.
What the hell does that mean?
I'm going to tell you right now. Is a novel that typically uses a series of fictionalized letters as a mechanic to tell the story. Sometimes these novels take the form of a series of diary entries instead of letters. Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula are both incredibly important pieces of horror history that use this technique. For context, Dracula was published in 1897 and Frankenstein in 1818. And Alan, I think this is an example that you would be more familiar with than I. But in 1926, H.P. Lovecraft's story called Call of Cthulhu was published.
Yeah.
Again, an example of an epistolary short story.
Was it a bunch of people or was it just one person? I mean, I know it's a collection of letters.
What I have here is that the story uses notes taken by a character named Francis Thurston as he investigates an ancient deity.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. It's been so long since I've read this novel that I didn't remember if it was just one person or if it was a collection of a whole bunch of people like Dracula. Also, there's other Lovecraft novels that just jump between different accounts of people.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm not a huge fan of that writing style.
Oh.
Epistolary, if
But
you
you
will.
like Dracula and Frankenstein.
I like the content. My first foray into the Dracula, if
Sure.
you will, was a full cast audiobook version.
Okay.
So meaning, a whole bunch of
cast.
different voice actors taking all the different characters.
Yep.
But because this is an epistolary novel,
Mm-hmm.
you have all these different perspectives from all these different characters, and each is a first person account. So you have dedicated voice actors to, like, this guy always voices Van Helsing. This guy always voices Mina. But because this is first person accounts, when Mina is writing the letter, that voice actor would do all the other voices as well. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're following me.
Right. Yeah. When that person is just narrating that chapter, that
Right,
section,
because they would be doing
in their voice.
yes,
Yeah.
which is so convoluted for an audiobook.
Yeah. It makes it hard to track the characters.
Right, because you identify. That's one of the beauties of a talented voice actor for audiobooks, is that you learn the characters based off like, they're doing this voice means they're doing this character.
Sure. Yeah.
But instead you have to learn it like 5 times over.
Yeah.
Very, very convoluted.
Sorry that you had that experience.
Thank
Sounds
you.
Traumatic.
It was. Which is a shame because it's like, overall, it's a really good novel with like a really fun, engaging story. And I was so distracted.
Right. You don't have any iconic like voices to latch on to.
The problem is that Dracula is full of so many very iconically voiced characters. Like everyone knows the Dracula accent.
Sure.
Or, the doctorish accent of Dr. Van Helsing. So, when you hear all these different voice actors take on that, it gets so confusing.
Yeah, that's fair. The very first epistolary novel, though, Alan, was not horror.
What was it? This is the Bible.
No. It's thought to be a novel called Prison of Love, a Spanish novel from 1485, which was written by Diego San Pedro. Beyond the horror examples I mentioned above, there are quite a few novels that use this technique, especially from the 1700s, but really from so many different centuries, including an erotic novel from 1748 called Fanny Hill by John Cleveland.
Fanny Hill?
Fanny Hill.
What is it about?
It's erotic.
Tell me more.
You're going to have to read it yourself. And Samuel Richardson's novels Pamela and Clarissa, both from the same century. But if you're looking for horror examples to read, again, beyond Dracula and Frankenstein, because definitely check those out, Stephen King's Carrie also qualifies.
It does?
King uses newspaper articles and letters along with prose to tell the story.
Huh. I've never read Carrie. I've only seen the movie.
Yeah, you should definitely read. I own it if you want to read it.
I don't really like epistolary novels.
Along with the iconic House of Leaves, which is a huge book that I've given up reading multiple times because it's so dense.
Why?
Have you ever seen it?
Well, you said it because it's so dense.
I used it in my last apartment to kill a spider, and then I threw it out.
It's been recommended to me so many times, but I've heard it's really bad to do in digital format.
Yeah, you have to read it because the whole thing is how it's formatted.
You have to flip around the book.
Yeah.
And
It's like a whole thing.
It's a puzzle in a book form.
Exactly. Yeah. But really cool for someone who has like the
Books.
focus for that, which I don't think you and I do.
What? I have lots of focus. Sorry, what were we talking about?
A more modern example is a novel called The Night Visitors by Jen Ashworth and Richard V. Hurst. And then 2 really recent examples from 2021. Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, and The Secret Skin, which tells the story using letters addressed to the main character's lover.
Oh.
Though epistolary novels typically use found materials, again, diaries, articles, field notes to tell the story, it's clear how this type of work paved the way for found footage horror films, which typically use home movies, mockumentary footage, CCTV recordings, or now Zoom calls to tell the story.
Or footage from news helicopters.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It feels like you maybe have a specific example in mind.
Chronicle.
Yes. Yeah, that was cool. One of the first fully found footage horror films to be released, not made, and certainly one of the most controversial, was a film called Cannibal Holocaust from 1980.
Oh, love that movie. We haven't seen
He
it.
jokes.
I'm kidding. We haven't seen it, but I really want to see it.
I really don't want to see it, and we will talk about why. Cannibal Holocaust is an Italian film that tells the story of a rescue mission in the Amazon rainforest, where footage is found of a lost documentary crew. The production of Cannibal Holocaust could sustain a podcast series of its own. It's a controversial film that's been banned in many countries due to actual animal cruelty and violence that went into the filmmaking.
What kind of animal cruelty?
I'm not going to outline that here today.
Oh, come on. Right now I'm still on I want to see it, but you can dissuade me right here and now.
There's animal cruelty, period. Real animal cruelty that happened in the production, not faked for Hollywood.
Yeah, but
I don't want to watch that.
It depends. It's like,
Alan, don't even make a joke.
is it like, did like the dog steal cars?
Not animals being cruel.
No, is it like...
It's people being cruel to animals. 10 days after the film premiered in Milan, the director was arrested and all copies were seized by the authorities. The director was charged with murder, though all the charges were dropped when he presented proof that the actors who had been killed in the film were still alive after the filming ended.
That's freaking dumb.
Many had believed that Cannibal Holocaust was actually a snuff film showing actual murders. However, part of this misunderstanding can be explained by the special contracts that the director required the talent to sign, banning them from appearing in any other media for 1 year after the film's release. He really wanted audiences to believe that this footage was real, not the work of actors. And he was almost too successful at this to his own demise.
It's interesting that the same authorities tried to arrest James Cameron for sinking that ship.
That being said, Cannibal Holocaust does contain, as I said, actual animal cruelty and killing, even though it does not contain human killing.
Which was cruelty to the animals, not animal crime.
Correct. Glad we've clarified that. And because of this, it's, again, really, really widely censored and banned in many countries because the killing of animals is not cool. Cannibal Holocaust is a really interesting first major found footage film because it was so, again, successful at what it attempted to do, make audiences believe that found footage is real. And that's really the premise of so many of these films, presenting, even though you're going to a theater, like trying to really get people to suspend disbelief and believe that this footage is real. There's some indie films that we're going to talk about who do try to present these fiction films as reality versus, things like Paranormal Activity, where we know going into it that it's fun and that it's fiction.
Yeah, but I'd say Paranormal Activity was kind of like...
It was just an example.
Maybe the last of that era of like, oh, this shit's real, I
don't know. I didn't think Paranormal Activity was real. Did you?
It's presented as such.
Well, but they all are. Like, there's always that slate at the beginning that's like, the footage you're about to see was found at the deep woods in the Minnesota coast.
We found it in a capsule drifting at sea.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, this is about a desert. But, okay, yeah, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
As we do.
But I think that these early found footage presenting as like this is real and scared the bejesus out of people, like that's great.
Sure.
Now when people try to do that, you either have to have an extra hook that like adds legitimacy. I do not have an example that makes sense.
I do. I think like now it's coming, the paradigm has shifted again, where you can't release a Hollywood found footage film or in any kind of theater, a film where you think you could convince audiences that it really happened. I think if you want to do something like that, you have to take it to YouTube, right? It has to, or something like that. It has to be a web series. You can't have that much production value in a found footage film where you have the capital to release it broadly in theaters and expect people to believe that it was real.
I think you can get away with it if you'd also like mix in a lot of documentary footage that has celebrities or people that have credibility already, or at least in the viewer's mind, saying that these things are real.
What's that film? I feel like we watched it in the last year or two where they use at the end footage from like a real speech that a politician made, like maybe in South America.
Yeah.
But they edit it so that it looks like they're admitting to UFOs or something existing.
The hell was that?
What movie is that?
It was Troll Hunter. A found footage movie.
Troll Hunter. Okay,
yes,
great. We're going to talk about that.
Yes, because they edited
a real,
it was the president
of Norway. Yeah, got it.
Saying trolls are real or something.
yeah. And the way they did it, you were like, "What the fuck?"
Oh shit! Yeah.
Yeah.
What? No one is really believing that Troll Hunter was real footage.
But it's convincing.
See, that's the thing. It has the extra hook.
Yeah.
Especially when they have the president at the end say stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, how the hell they get him to do that?
Yeah. Two films that predate Cannibal Holocaust but contain partial found footage mechanics are The Connection and Coming Apart, both dramas from the 1960s. And there was also a found footage film that was again made before Cannibal Holocaust, a film called The Other Side of the Wind by Orson Welles. However, it wasn't released until
a stupid name.
2018.
The Other Side of the Wind.
It's a film within a film, and it's categorized as a drama comedy, but not horror. I just think it's really interesting that Orson Welles made this during his life, and it wasn't kind of put together and edited and released until after his death, only a few years ago. It's not horror, but because he's just like such a big name, I thought it was worth mentioning.
Not to be confused with the sequel, The Breath of Tomorrow.
And it actually has 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, so.
Yeah, I'm sure people love it.
All right, Alan, let's talk about the first film that we watched for this episode.
Troll Hunter.
A film called The McPherson Tape from 1989. This was produced to feel like authentic footage of an alien abduction happening to a Connecticut family. It was made for only $6,500 and written, directed, and produced by Dean Aliato. I really wanted to watch this movie because I liked the fact that it was so incredibly low budget, and I thought that it might be more successful at feeling authentic because of that, because it was so low budget. I think it was like a little bit difficult to watch because of how grainy it was, and the effects weren't amazing, and it was a little boring. But all that being said, I do think there was some moments that felt really authentic because they could get away with it.
Well, they did a staple of these found footage films, and that is having the actors just improvise.
Right.
They're not following a script.
You have to, yeah.
It's a complete cacophony of conversation every time somebody speaks, that's how people are.
Yeah, I will say it feels like the scenes where they're at their daughter's birthday party or whatever feel like real home movies.
Well, when the film started, like a few minutes into it, I asked you, is this real?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, Alan, you dumb fuck. No, it's not. And I don't know, like they present it as very real.
Yeah.
And also that's another staple of these found footage films. If you want it to, a very easy way to present it as this is real is you don't put in like some crazy supernatural thing.
Right.
You just show something that is like
but they do
taboo.
Put in.
Yeah. But like it could just be it could be a murder,
Totally.
Right? And like, sure, I guarantee you there's found footage films of murders. That's just a snuff film, really, if it's not produced.
Well, a found footage slasher film would be incredibly cheap to make. And if you could make it, in a good way, if you have talented people, that's a great doable thing from like a filmmaking perspective where you don't need, because the one thing about found footage films is if you are going to make a film like Troll Hunter or Chronicle, like you still need to have a budget. Found footage is great because it allows people, I think, who maybe don't like things like the Blair Witch Project. You don't have any kind of budget. You can make a really successful horror film. However, if you're going to show something, right, like an alien or a creature or whatever, the special effects that you need to convince people in a found footage film is so much more because of the way that you shoot it. You know what I'm saying?
What was the Halloween movie that was like a whole bunch of people in a house with cameras?
Halloween Resurrection.
It was Resurrection?
When they're all like filming each other?
Yeah, with like, what was it? Busta Rhymes?
Yeah, Busta Rhymes. And the trailer from that movie from 2002 was so scary to me back in the day. Really. And then we watched it when we did our Halloween series, and it's not that scary at all.
Right. Well, it was a little scary.
Yeah, but not what I was expecting at all. It's kind of funny. It has like a silly vibe.
Yeah, Busta Rhymes does kung fu.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like
cool.
a MTV like kind of thing where they're all filming like a challenge to stay in this house.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you say, well, obviously that's not found footage.
No, but I think that counts in some way.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing the story through the characters' cameras.
Yes. And yeah, they're not trying to sell it as anything except exactly what it is.
Right. Yeah.
It's fun.
That mechanic is built in. So it's not found footage, but I think the result is still the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's another movie. Is it 13 Ghosts where they all have cameras and shit on them?
Mm-hmm. Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. I'm just thinking of like anytime a movie has like a first person perspective.
Right. Which still breaks that wall, right?
Yeah.
Of like, so it is a sister mechanic, I would say.
Remember the Doom movie from
No.
with The Rock from like 2005-ish?
No,
Okay, well, it's
not at all.
It's amazing.
Okay.
It's a great movie.
Yep.
It's not true. I mean, I love it though. It's a lot of fun, and it has one of the most iconic scenes. The character goes on a rampage, and it switches over to first person, and it looks like a first person shooter.
Well,
And just like, I don't know, before that, I hadn't seen that in a movie.
right.
There's since been a number of movies that use this mechanic, but this was super cool because you see. I don't think it was The Rock because I think The Rock becomes a bad guy, but
Spoiler.
sorry, but yeah, you just see them go first person around Mars, I think, and just like weighing waste to all sorts of demons and monsters and stuff.
That's fun.
It's a lot of fun. It's in one shot, obviously, because it's first person.
Yep. Let's talk about one of my favorite movies of all time.
Halloween.
The film that I would say really put found footage on the map and still lingers in the minds of audiences to this day.
Oh, The Breakfast Club.
The Blair Witch Project from 1999. If you haven't seen Blair Witch, it tells the story of 3 students who hike deep into the Maryland woods near the fictional town of Blair as they make a documentary about the legends of the Blair Witch. In my opinion, the Blair Witch is the Halloween franchise of the 90s, or the Halloween film, right? In the same way that like John Carpenter took a no budget, kind of developed the slasher genre, changed the scope of horror. I think Blair Witch did that, right? It had very low budget. It put found footage on the map, and it had this very, and I know you don't like it, but I do, and it had this very lasting and meaningful impact with audiences and within the horror genre. Say what you want about the movie, but I believe that to be fact. And it also, like Halloween, had an insanely high return on its investment.
I mean, that's the beauty of found footage films is that they are so cheap to make.
Sometimes.
They can be.
Yep.
Because you save so much money on your cinematography budget because you just give the stupid actors the camera.
Yeah.
You don't have to hire anybody.
Well, that's not true. Some people do still have cinematographers.
Well, no, you don't have to pay for anything. You just find the footage in the woods. And then
there you go.
You
and
post
then you edit it, yeah. The numbers are estimated, but the shooting budget was under $100K. In post, like after, it got some traction, it shot up to $500 to $750K. But all in, the Blair Witch Project, which cost less than $1 million to make, brought in over $250 million.
It's pretty good.
It was not the first film to use found footage or a gimmicky marketing campaign, but it paired them perfectly together and it drove the audiences wild. It was directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez. The production style behind Blair Witch is fascinating. So what the filmmakers did was they came up with this local folklore, right? The Blair Witch folklore, which is fictionalized, along with a 35-page script. But they left the actors to improvise the dialogue. So they had a sense of what was going to happen and where it was going, but they left a lot of the decisions or the reactions to those things to the actors. The directors actually maintain a website still to this day where they update the legend as more sequels come out, because now it's a whole franchise.
Have you seen anything besides the first one?
Yeah, I've seen a few.
Are they any good?
They're okay.
Do you ever see the Blair Witch?
Yes, I do think you do.
Is she cool?
I don't have a clear memory of her.
Mm.
I also played the Blair Witch video game when I was younger, and I think she's in that, so I have like a mushy memory.
We have the Blair Witch video game.
Oh, do we on Steam?
It's not. No, it's not on Steam.
Oh.
Sorry for all you listening. Abby has this hang up on she only likes games on Steam now.
That's
after a
right.
recent discovery. But no, they released it for free. I assume it was either PlayStation or Xbox, but it's like one of the free monthly games they gave out. It's a first-person horror survival game.
I remember having it as growing up, and there was a red disc or a box for like Blair Witch 1 and a blue one for like Blair Witch 2 based on the second film.
I don't think this is based on any of the films. I mean, the lore probably is,
Yeah.
but this is a new story that is told, at least in this game. The game's pretty
gotcha.
modern. It's like from 2018
I think we
or
played it,
something.
actually. I kind of remember it now. But this is different. The one I played back in middle school or whatever was different.
I remember the one time, I think we played
Yeah,
together.
you walk into the woods, right? And you
Yeah,
have like a
and
walkie-talkie.
And we got lost in the woods.
Yeah, just as you're supposed to, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a scary thing. It was like where do I go? And you could
Right.
just
We
keep
couldn't
walking.
figure out what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got hungry, so we...
So the film was shot over 8 days, and they filmed 20 hours of footage. I'm quoting from Wikipedia here.
Well, hang on. 20 hours of footage, but they had multiple cameras.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Quote, when the Blair Witch Project premiered at the Sundance Film Festival at midnight on January 23rd, 1999, its promotional marketing campaign listed the actors as either missing or deceased. Owing to its successful run at Sundance, Artisan Entertainment bought the film's distribution rights for $1.1 million. The film had a limited release on July 14th the same year, before expanding to a wider release starting on July 30th. While critical reception was mostly positive, audience reception was split. The Blair Witch Project grossed nearly $250 million worldwide, making it one of the most successful independent films of all time, end quote. The Blair Witch was also unique because it's often cited as the first film that really used the internet as a marketing technique, right? They had created this website that I talked about, but back then in 1999, it had these like fake news reports and these like newsreel type footage things being like these people are missing, like the names of the actors, like they're missing. They went into the woods. Like they really was the first film that kind of had this quote unquote viral marketing campaign. And I think it really was successful. Before the film even hit theaters, there was a cultural debate over whether it was fiction or real. At screenings, the filmmakers would also pass out flyers asking for information about the missing students.
One thing I do want to note here
Yeah.
is that, what was the other shitty movie we watched with the aliens?
The
The
McPherson tape.
McPherson tape. I looked up a few facts on the McPherson tape.
Okay.
Most people agree, and at least from the sources that I was reading, there's a consensus that the film is not very good.
Yeah.
However, the problem is that we're looking at it with modern eyes.
Yep.
Because the movie did not come out when it was made. Or if it did, it didn't have any kind of real distribution.
Right. It was made in 89.
It was made in 89, yes. But it wasn't until DVDs were like the
Sure.
staple that the film got any kind of real distribution. And apparently that has to do with some warehouse fire that destroyed the master copy.
Yep. That's true.
Which, I mean, I think the movie looks like shit regardless, but maybe that's also why it's so shitty. Or why it's extra shitty is because they lost their master.
Sure.
But anyways, many years after its prime was when the thing finally got released. But the movie really pushes the fact that like this is real. These horrible things happen to these people, and we refuse to acknowledge that they're not.
Right.
You know, and so it kind of did what Blair Witch did, but preceded it by a decade.
Literally 1 decade, yeah.
And it uses all of the gimmicks that are staples in the found footage industry now, such as like when things get crazy, there's all sorts of like jumbly crap in the camera. There's like a video artifacting, the crazy cacophonous dialogue, hard to understand the characters because they're far away and shit's going down.
And the fact that nothing is lit, so like you can't see what the characters are seeing. You can't see the alien in the background all the time. You only see it when they can hide it well.
Yes, and also they used garbage cameras for that exact purpose.
Totally,
It hides your mistakes.
Your shitty cheap effects.
Yeah, not your mistakes. It hides your awful production value.
Yeah.
But
we do that all the time.
all the time. The last film we shot was shot on a little Happy Meal
vintage lens, yeah, because we didn't have the
Happy Meal lens.
FX
It was
budget.
not the Happy Meal lens. I'm sorry, that's being unfair to the lens. We shot on a lens. I think it was pioneered in like the 60s, maybe.
Yeah.
Was an early Polaroid lens, and that exact lens is what has kind of defined the quote unquote Instagram look. But we just threw it on a camera, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
But yeah, it's a horrible, horrible lens. Okay, sorry. The last thing I want to say about the McPherson tape is that it does deserve a little spot on the shelf,
Which we gave it.
for being a historically important film.
Yeah.
It pioneered all these things because it was the first to do all these things. People ended up doing them again later,
Better.
not being inspired by the McPherson tape because no one fucking saw it. But still, they get their little feather in their cap for
They
being
did
the
it
first ones to do it.
Yeah, very good. Back to the Blair Witch briefly. Again, at screenings, the filmmakers would hand out flyers asking if anyone had seen the quote-unquote missing actors or missing students. And even the IMDb page listed the actors as missing, presumed dead for the first year after release.
I like that. Has anyone seen these missing actors? Excuse me, I mean students.
I mean, I think it's pretty intense that you would go to the IMDb page and it says missing, presumed dead next to everybody's name.
There was IMDb in 1999?
Hell yeah.
When was IMDb started? Holy cow. So we just asked Google, and IMDb started in 1990.
October 17th, 1990.
Wow.
The Blair Witch Project went on to inspire not only sequels, but so many more found footage films in the genre. Also in 1999 was a film called 8mm, starring Nicolas Cage, directed by Joel Schumacher. 8mm is a crime thriller with a mere 23% on Rotten Tomatoes.
What? Wait, there's a Nicolas Cage found footage film.
Yeah.
What the heck? I want to see that. Why are you sandbagging and holding all the
I
good
sent
ones?
you this outline weeks ago.
No, but you got to circle Nicolas Cage movies.
Okay,
You know the rules.
Next time I'll highlight it. The film follows Cage's character, a detective who has discovered a terrible murder, which was recorded on film. You can watch it in the next episode. You can come back. And
Are
tell
there
everyone
any
what you
movies that star Nicolas Cage and Bill Nye?
think. Alan's dream come true.
And yeah, where they become rival superheroes? That'd be so freaking cool.
Maybe you can pitch it to them.
Where Nicolas Cage has to steal cars to pay for
Bill
Nye's music career.
But for some reason, the real heyday of found footage horror filmmaking came in the aughts. We have films like Paranormal Activity, Chronicle, Lake Mungo, Cloverfield, VHS, Wreck.
I have one question.
Tell me.
What are the aughts?
The 2000s, like 2000 to 2010, the aughts.
So what's beyond 2010?
The
they're
tens.
called the aughts?
Yeah.
By whom?
The world. And that's only to name a few, right? But I want to focus for a little bit on Paranormal Activity because it really did sweep the nation. Paranormal Activity debuted at the 2007 Scream Fest Horror Film Festival, after which it was acquired by Paramount Pictures. Quoting from the CBR article by Timothy Donahue, quote, after showing it at 12 different college towns on September 25th, 2009, Paramount used the site Eventful to request from interested viewers as to where it should be screened next. This put in the moviegoers' hands the opportunity to decide the fate of what was now a movie that the studio was putting a lot of faith in. The hype already surrounding the movie made it an event, and viewers had the chance to bring it to their local theater if they so demanded it, end quote. Paramount next agreed to release the film broadly if 1 million requests were made. a goal that was met very quickly. So one thing that Paramount did incredibly successfully was let the viewers sign this petition, essentially, that drummed up all of this interest around this like, oh, this movie that's so scary. The second thing, and I think the thing that was really unique to Paranormal Activity, was that the trailer showed no footage from the movie. It only showed the audience reactions. And it was like, you know, and I remember that very vividly.
I remember that too.
People freaking the fuck out. And like, I remember going to see the movie. I actually think my parents came to visit me in college, and we took out my friend Olivia, and we were so scared before we even saw the movie because of the trailer was so successful.
Yeah, I remember this. It's interesting. I remember the trailer for this movie even being parodied by other things.
Oh, totally.
Like, that's how influential this stupid commercial was.
It was like the first reaction thing, yeah. And it didn't show anything. So the film itself was such a mystery. You had no idea going in what it was going to be, which also like drummed up intrigue.
Right, because I never saw it until like we watched it together just a couple of years ago. So that which was my first delve into Paranormal Activity. I was so scared because I had no idea what the movie was about.
Yeah.
I just knew that all these people that saw it got so scared, and like my freaking monkey brain is like, well, if Al, they're getting scared, you better not watch it.
Exactly. There are currently 7 Paranormal Activity films. I think I may have seen like 1 or 2, and there's also this like unofficial Japanese sequel, which we'll talk about in a minute. I'm going to quote again here from the CBR article. Quote, "Part of what made the film's jump scares so terrifying were how relatively mundane they seemed. Lights flickered on and off, while doors slammed loudly shut. The creepiness was amped up by the film's lack of a budget and grainy footage. A version of the film with a big budget and slicker visuals would instantly lose the creepy charm of what makes these things so scary."
So Paranormal Activity 2.
The relative lack of gore meant that the film would need to do something else to shock audiences.
Yeah, they slide the chair with a string.
Similar to the aforementioned Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity was released as the genre was oversaturated with mindless, interchangeable slasher films. This made their more ordinary brand of horror stand out better against the competition.
Yeah.
Also explaining their influence on the genre, end quote.
Okay, so we're kind of circling back to, if you're going to try to sell this as real, do something that's not wildly outlandish.
Totally.
And they do a great job. Again, like a chair slightly moving, they somehow make so freaking scary.
Oh, it's so scary. It really is.
Just like the blanket moving. Everyone loses their mind.
Yeah.
But you watch like another film where a blanket moves and you're like...
I mean, we should also mention for Blair Witch, and this is a spoiler, but it was made in 1999, so I'm going to spoil it. But like nothing really, you don't ever see anything in Blair Witch. And so the first time you watch it...
That's not true. You see some spooky stick formations.
Yeah, but I'm saying you don't see anything violent. But the whole thing is based off of the anticipation of what you will see. And you don't ever see it. And it still works as a very successful horror film. And you don't have to have a huge budget to do that, right? And so I do think with found footage, you can have incredible films like Blair Witch that show nothing. Or you can have incredible films like Chronicle or Troll Hunter that have very high budgets in comparison.
Sure.
But there is still a spectrum within there, and it does make space for indie filmmakers to come in. But it also, you know, when you have something like Troll Hunter, it's such a wild and entertaining cinematic experience because it does have a budget and it does do it well. But it's also something that's easy to fuck up.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Chronicle as being a high budget, because it feels high budget, but it's actually not.
It is high budget. We looked it up.
It's
like 12 million or
12
something.
million.
I think that's high budget for a found footage film.
Well, not for that studio.
Okay.
For them, it was like one of their lower budget movies. According to the director, it's also one of the best ROIs on a film.
Well, also, that tells me that you have Hollywood people. If that's low budget to that studio, then you have like really high caliber, quote unquote, Hollywood filmmakers working on that project.
I want to say that most of the budget for that film went to
the last scene.
Well, just effects, and production value. You know,
Both.
like the movie is full of CGI and all sorts of. It feels like a blockbuster film.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because it is a blockbuster film. But if you really want like a pinnacle Hollywood found footage film, Cloverfield.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a film that's more high budget than that, but I think you're right. I think Cloverfield is probably the top of the line. I think it's excellent. I loved Cloverfield. The budget for Cloverfield was $25 million US.
Okay, so a lot of money, but yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, not like Titanic money.
Yeah, our freaking scale for like what's a large amount of money for movies is so skewed now.
But yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Cloverfield since it came out in the theater, but I remember loving it. And it does feel, it doesn't feel like, oh, I found this footage in the woods.
Is now an appropriate time to talk about Cloverfield?
Yeah.
Okay, so we did not rewatch Cloverfield.
Yep. Because it made such a lasting impression the first time.
Yes, and that for me, this was by design. However,
it also made me sick.
This is a movie I will never rewatch.
Why?
There's a very short list of movies that I'm putting a line in the sand saying I will never watch this again.
No, this is news to me.
Some of those movies just because like they were really upsetting.
Cannibal Holocaust.
Even like if it's even like really bad movies, I'll often give it a second go if someone's like watch it with this new perspective in mind. Here's why I love this film. I'll give it another go. But Cloverfield, I will never rewatch.
Tell me why.
Okay, so it's really simple. I don't think that Cloverfield was like a particularly amazing film by comparison to other kaiju movies, I guess. However, that's said through the lens of hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I saw it, I was in a theater where the entire audience was so on board with this film, yelling, screaming, cheering, all at the appropriate times. Like
that's so fun.
The whole audience was so on board. It's like you're at a stadium, watching like the finals, you know. And I remember feeling something I'd never felt before.
Yeah.
Which was empathy.
Oh God, are you kidding me? You really are a serial killer. You know,
especially in a movie with really cool giant monsters.
Yeah,
you know, like I love those. I love those.
And you felt empathy for the first time for the monsters?
No,
for the people.
The people.
Thank God.
I felt that the characters. Like I'm looking through rose-tinted glasses. But I really cared about these characters.
The first time in a movie that you ever cared for the characters.
In a movie like this, where like the thrills are from seeing the monsters do horrible things.
Right.
Right? That's what you watch a kaiju movie for. Of them destroying the city, of them snapping up the people, right?
Yeah.
I remember the characters ran down into a subway. And I'm just like, just stay here. Just don't leave. Just stay in the little subway and you're going to be safe. Meanwhile, every other like slasher, anything movie, it's like, get the hell out of here. Go fight the guy. You're going to do great.
This is really illuminating.
Because, half the time, way more than half the time, actually, in the genre of horror, the characters are unlikable.
Sure. Well, yeah, by design. Because otherwise it would be impossible to watch the movies if you were so sad every time someone died.
You know, think about Hellraiser.
Yeah.
The villains are freaking cool.
Uh-huh.
The characters are wildly unlikable.
Yeah.
And so watching these people, you know, get the business are
saying have sex or be killed.
Be killed.
Oh, okay.
That's fun. And like it makes it an extra like it's a guilty pleasure then, right? Sure. Of watching people with Cloverfield, I so badly wanted all of the characters to make it out. Or at least by the time they got to the subway, where it's like whoever was left, I was just like, I care about your well-being. I like you guys. I want to see you in the sequel. But, you know, I don't even remember how the movie ends. I can't tell you what happens in Cloverfield. I just remember my emotional response to the film.
I had an audience viewing experience like that when I watched Get Out, where the whole theater was cheering and applauding and screaming and scared, and that was really fun.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just confused Get Out with Knives Out.
Oh, no.
Different films.
Different films, yeah. My Cloverfield experience is that I think it came out when I was in high school, and I went with this guy that I dated for like a month in high school, and after the movie, he realized we got to his car that he had dropped his key in the theater, so we went back in to get it, and we ran into his ex-girlfriend that he had just broken up with.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was marred by that social encounter. But I do remember really liking Cloverfield, but it making me a little nauseous because of the style of filmmaking.
Did you guys make out during the movie?
I don't remember. Let's talk about the film VHS.
Oh, sure.
So
hey, we saw that.
We just watched it.
We just watched it for
night,
this, yeah.
Last 2 nights. VHS, if anyone is not aware, is an anthology found footage film, meaning that it's made up of several shorter found footage films within kind of a larger narrative. So it's almost like an epistolary found footage film in a way.
This is my preferred format for anthology films.
To have it like bookended?
To have a motivation for the anthology.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's just you have a collection of short films. Call it that, you jerk.
Call it horror stories.
Call it horror stories. I don't like anthologies that don't have a
through line.
A through line. So for anyone who hasn't seen VHS, I don't think that this is not, this is right in the description of the film. Some guys go to a house and start watching VHS tapes.
Yep.
That was like the least spoilery thing ever. I mean, I left some things out. There's motivation for doing all these things, but they cut to the tapes that they watch.
Yep.
And everything makes sense. I really like how it all tied together.
The one thing too to know, I mean, I have a few segments I really liked, so I want to get your take on which ones you liked and which ones you didn't like. But one of the segments was actually directed by T. West, who's having a moment in time right now as a director because his films Pearl and X both released last year. And so this was kind of like an early work for T. West, which was cool to see.
Hey, I saw X.
Yeah, you did.
Was it for Horror Movie Club?
No, we just watched it.
Okay.
So tell me your favorite segment from VHS. Your favorite anthology, like your favorite piece of the anthology.
I don't know. So I think I have two. I like the last one.
Same.
Just because it's just like, it was a very good climax. Or again, we're not trying to spoil any films, but this is a very, very exciting romp through a haunted house. Other one that I really, really liked was, I think, of the first one.
Oh, yeah.
Where the guys take the girl home from
the
club.
bar. Yeah.
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 And one of the reasons is it followed one of my preferred formulas of make your protagonists so unlikable that you are rooting for the very, very cool villain.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I liked the first one a lot. I loved the last one. The only other one that I really liked was actually the T. West short, which was like the honeymoon, the couple, and the filming while they were sleeping.
That was spooky.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I liked the twist ending.
I did not like the Zoom one.
Yeah, which we're going to talk about at the end.
At the end.
So the Skype call, I believe, probably not Zoom at that time, is actually something called screen life horror that we're going to discuss a little bit at the end because it's kind of a subgenre within found footage.
There's a whole subgenre about that?
Sure is. And it's essentially films that take place entirely through screens.
How many? Really?
There's more and more of them now, especially with the pandemic. People kind of made some Zoom horror stuff.
Right, because that's literally all they got.
Yeah, so it's not like a large category, but there's some examples we'll talk about when we get there.
Speaking of large categories, I just want to say, getting ready for this episode, I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch all of the found footage movies. Or I'm going to watch a whole bunch of these found footage movies. How many can there possibly be? The answer is a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than I was expecting, and holy cow. I guess, yeah, they're cheap to make, and they were popular for a while, so everyone tried to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah. There certainly are a lot. And at the end, we'll give a grocery list of films that we didn't get to watch to talk about in depth. But you also watched a movie called Jerusalem.
With a Z in the middle.
And did you like it?
Yes, I did.
Tell me more.
Okay, here we go. I was hooked by the description.
Which is what?
Some people go to Jerusalem with an S, not a Z at the time. And then they encounter a demonic outbreak.
Like a demonic outbreak.
Demonic outbreak.
Okay.
The film starts with, obviously everything is found footage. It starts with like a clip of this woman who is like clearly unwell, like possessed or something. And all these like holy men surrounding her. from the three predominant faiths in Jerusalem. So you have Islam, Judaism, and Christianity.
Sure.
They're all like teaming up to deal with her. Then all of a sudden she sprouts big demon wings and they shoot her in the head. And so she dies, right? So like that's like the premise. That was like a video that sort of went viral, right? But, deemed as fake, whatever. This movie also had a good reason for being found footage, which is also something that we haven't addressed yet, of like you need a gimmick or some kind of reason of like why the hell this footage exists in the first place.
Totally. And sometimes that feels more forced than other times.
Oh, yeah. We'll circle back after this movie because I have a lot to say on that. But in this case, it is like Google Glasses or the equivalent, right? So, has a camera built in, social media, and all these like fun augmented reality things. And she's wearing them and she has like bad eyesight, so they're prescription. And then a child thief steals her purse, which has her regular glasses. So she's forced to wear these silly Google glasses for the rest of her vacation.
Okay.
The demonic outbreak is freaking cool. It's basically zombies, but demons. So they're demon zombies, which is kind of a callback to Sam and Maddie for anyone who has seen that incredible film
that Alan worked on.
But also it's kind of like Cloverfield because there's some big freaking things. The big things are actually Nephilim, which is a term that I'm very familiar with through the Diablo franchise. So in Diablo, Nephilim are the offspring of angels and demons. The biblical translation of Nephilim, which is what Jerusalem uses, simply means giant. So you get these gigantic, demonic, angelic, whatever things stomping around the city. And they look like the cool. You never get a good look at them, but it's basically the Cloverfield monster. Cool. Some giant walking monolith thing that is just destroying the city. Meanwhile, there's this plague that is going around that is turning people into these demons.
Gotcha.
They get possessed coincidentally through zombie bites. If you get bitten by a demon, you turn into a demon. You're following these characters that they actually made fairly likable.
Did you feel empathy for them?
I did feel empathy for them.
Oh, that's great. So was that one of your favorite, besides Cloverfield, found footage films?
It's up there.
Okay, nice.
My number one found footage film, though, besides Cloverfield, because that's like a whole other category, simply because I can never watch it again. So how can I possibly give it a reliable review, is Chronicle.
So tell us about Chronicle.
Chronicle is a fantastic movie. Not horror. I don't know. Maybe it's horror. It has horrific elements. I don't know what genre we would classify Chronicle as. This movie, and I'm pulling this from something I read, but it's 100% accurate, is the closest we're ever going to get, most likely, to a live action Akira.
I don't know what that is.
You've never seen Akira?
No, I've never heard about
Akira.
No.
You don't know what word I'm saying.
Correct.
That's incredible. I'm gonna blow your mind.
Great.
So not right now, because you're just gonna watch it. This was a pinnacle anime, but a feature film based off a manga, but it was a feature film. This was like how a lot of Americans were introduced to anime across the board, just because this theatrical film made such a splash. This was a lot of people's first delve into this type of animation. And the premise is that what happens when people basically get superpowers, but they're normal people. They don't have the fictionally flawless moral compass of like Superman.
Sure.
They're just normal people doing normal things.
Yeah. And they have to deal with
and their
downfall in some ways.
Corruption, the corruption of power, pettiness, all sorts of stuff. And just suddenly you're in a world of tissue paper where you can destroy anything.
Yeah.
It's a really, really fun film.
Awesome. That is great. Yeah. I mean, Chronicle, I think, also stands out again. I think it has a $12.5 million budget for a few reasons. One is that it's not traditional horror, like Alan said. I would say it's like sci-fi, horror, thriller, somewhere within that trifecta.
Yeah.
But it's also, instead of telling the story of another scary thing that's infiltrating a town or that's happening, it's more of a personal story.
It's a character piece.
A character piece, yeah. So we loved Chronicle. Alan had already seen it, but that definitely stood out for us, I think.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, and it feels, again, it has like a different vibe than what you expect from some of the found footage formula films.
I believe it's from 2012 or 2013. But fun news, Chronicle 2 is slated for next year.
Oh, that's exciting.
In this case, it takes place 10 years after the last movie.
Sure.
And it's an all-female cast.
Cool. We love that. In 2015, M. Night Shyamalan blessed us with one of the most terrifying films I've ever seen.
The Village.
The Visit. Though I know that opinion is specifically mine and not shared by everyone, I really think that this film is fucking terrifying. And I also think it's an important film for the found footage genre. The interesting thing here, and I kind of already mentioned this, but the genre is appealing to filmmakers because it's typically cheaper to make, right? So you can get into the space a little bit without having a budget. But in this case, we have an incredibly well-known horror director who spends only $5 million making a found footage film. But still, right? You have M. Night, so you're going to have the prestige and the expertise of him and his crew. And it was really fun to see, in my opinion, a really established horror director tackle this genre and do it really well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the movie had a crazy high budget.
$5 million.
Oh, that's actually very reasonable. Okay, never mind. I was going to say, like, it feels like a low-budget movie.
Right, but it is in some ways.
Yeah, for M. Night, they probably spent the entire budget on catering.
The year before The Visit, Creep was released. And like The Visit, Creep stars notable talent and was created by well-known people. But it uses the genre to play a little bit more than The Visit did. So Creep has a ton of improvisation, both by the actors and the filmmakers. The premise is that our main character responds to an online ad to make a video for a man's unborn son. After traveling into the middle of nowhere, the videographer soon realizes he's put himself into a scary situation. The film stars Mark Duplass and was directed by Patrick Bryce. And because of the improvised filmmaking, there are at least 3 unseen alternative endings. But I do really like the ending that we get. I think it's kind of iconic.
Wait, there's multiple endings to this movie?
There's up to 3 because they just made, like, they redid it, it went in all these different directions. It was like a spider web of a film shoot. And then they kind of put it together at the end.
Wait, is it like Clue where you didn't know what ending you were going to see when you went to the theater?
No, they picked one. The filmmakers picked one. But they shot lots of different versions of things, right? Because they just, like, I forget exactly how they did it, but they didn't have a script going in. They just kind of had an idea and then they let it play out.
So we watched this film years ago after it was recommended to us.
By my therapist.
Yes, which is... There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
But I remember we were watching it and we're like, why the fuck are we watching this? Why does she love this movie so much? And then, like, we finished the film and I wasn't super impressed.
I remember liking it.
But then it sat with me. Mm-hmm. And I kept thinking about it. In retrospect, man, I like that movie. I think it's a good movie. But at the time, not for me.
It's a rare thing, too, because I really, really like Creep, but I also equally like Creep 2, which I think is so rare that a sequel is as good, if not maybe better than the original.
That's true.
Creep 2, which came out in 2017, is fantastic. They are both so... I think what I like about them is that they're fun. In addition to being scary and smart and all these other things, they're fun. Like, they're funny, they're fun, they play with themselves, they make fun of themselves. Like, and I enjoy films that are just entertaining to watch, and I think that these films are.
It's also something to say about this franchise because, like, the second one, great movie, but the whole hook of the first one is you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, and then by the second one you do, but they make it different enough that it's not stale.
Yeah. I think it's also worth noting. So one of our avid listeners, Dan from Yonkers. I think the word he despises found footage movies. Mm-hmm. Is that the word he used?
Yeah.
However, loves Creep and Creep 2. There's something special about these movies that resonates with people.
Special sauce.
There's a special sauce slathered over the DVD that people just really like.
We've also mentioned this film a few times, but I do want to give a moment to Troll Hunter from 2010.
Great movie.
It's not specifically horror, but it's sort of horror. Troll Hunter tells the story of a group of Norwegian students who travel into the wild following a troll hunter. I mentioned it because of the special effects, right? They really are incredible, and it makes, even though you know it's not real, like it really makes you suspend disbelief for a moment there. You know, you get into it, and it's just really cool to see the different things, the different creatures that they create in this movie.
Yeah. It's
And they look realistic enough that you're on board with it.
it's a fun romp into like troll mythology too.
Totally, yeah. Absolutely.
Which I don't know. I've never experienced that before.
One of its kind.
Outside of like what? The Hobbit?
Speaking of foreign language films, I want to highlight a few non-English found footage films as well. Wreck from 2009 is a Spanish film. Again, Japan has a Paranormal Activity 2, Tokyo Night from 2010, a film called Occult from 2009, and from South Korea, Gonjiam Haunted Asylum from 2018. Also, there's a subgenre of found footage, as we've mentioned, called screen life horror. I learned all of this from a Bloody Disgusting article, but I'm going to quote here from Wikipedia.
I'm sorry, what?
There was an article from Bloody Disgusting, and Bloody Disgusting is actually a group, I suppose, that also created VHS.
Is that a publication?
It's a website, bloodydisgusting.com,
Just go to bloodydisgusting.com?
but it's also a group that created VHS. So kind of like
movie.
Fangoria, right? Where Fangoria is a magazine, but they also fund films and things.
I understand.
So, but this is a quote from Wikipedia that's going to help define screen life horror.
I'm ready.
Quote, screen life or computer screen film is a genre of visual storytelling where all the events are shown on a computer, tablet, or smartphone screen. It became popular in the 2010s with the growing impact of the internet. The first film that entirely uses this method is a French film called Thomas Was in Love from 2000. But in 1997, 3 years before, there's a film called Level 5 that uses portions of this mechanic. And I actually think, Alan, you would like Level 5 because it's the story of a widow who is trying to finish her late husband's video game.
Oh.
And probably, again, the most well-known example would be the segment from VHS where we have the Skype call.
Are there other full features that...
There's a few films from really recently that are Zoom horror films that use it in that way, that were made like during the pandemic.
Right. Well, isn't there also that, I don't know if it's point and click, but it's like a video game that you kickstarted.
Oh, Ghosts. I think it's called Ghosts. It hasn't come out yet.
Ghosts?
But
it's all over...
It's live action.
It's live action, but it's all over like Zoom, right?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I thought it was.
I don't think so.
Well, we don't have to.
We'll see.
This. Maybe it is. We can tease it.
Yeah. Quoting from the Bloody Disgusting article by Luis H.C. More recently, the COVID-19 pandemic led to a significant boost in screen life releases, with studios becoming desperate for readily available horror content that could be easily distributed on streaming platforms. From Spree, which is in parentheses here, an underrated satire of modern-day ride shares in streamer culture, to Host, which became the pandemic's first viral hit and spawned a spiritual successor in the form of this year's Dashcam. There's plenty of screen life horror to go around these days.
Got it. Makes sense. So, because you and I have been talking about trying to put together a found footage short. And one of the big conversations we had was, well, we need to think of a mechanic of why are they filming in the first place. And if there's anything that these found footage movies have taught us, it's that you don't really need one. It helps a lot with my personal take, but people just film shit all the time for literally no reason.
Sure, I do it.
However, I don't know if this is a good time to pivot, but there's one other movie that I watched for this episode that just really grinded my gears in regards to the whole why are they filming?
Okay.
And that was Apollo 18.
Oh, sure.
So I was really excited about this movie because I love space movies. And the premise is that it's another Apollo mission that goes to the moon. And this is the fictionalized Apollo 18 mission when Apollo 18 and upwards were scrubbed. 17 was the last one. Official one. And then the reason, the movie takes some liberties and be like, the reason they were scrubbed was because all this crazy shit that happened in 18. And they go to the moon and wow, holy cow, some stuff happens. But originally they're filming because there's like, cameras in the lander.
Mm-hmm.
Same reason why the movie Europa Report exists, which I don't know if you saw. That's another found footage movie, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh, there you go.
It's about, which is about astronauts going to the moon Europa. That's a great example of how to make a space movie on a low budget is make it found footage.
Sure.
Because you only have to make the
make, like, a
inside
set,
of the
yeah.
spaceship, and then like occasionally they'll pull the camera and like look out the window.
Sure.
It's you don't need to do the shot of the flying spaceship, right? Because how would they possibly get that shot? But in this case, yeah, the astronauts are filming themselves with film cameras because those are like the type of cameras that NASA was still using at the time, and things were plausible. They are filming each other doing science things, filming each other goofing off. But then once shit starts hitting the fan, oftentimes there is no explanation for who's filming or why a camera is rolling on things. And often suddenly you're just like watching a movie that's handheld and people are moving the camera around. And like, guess what? There's literally nobody left to be filming this, but they just needed footage of it. So they just went handheld and called it found footage.
Yeah. So you overall didn't like Apollo 18?
It's okay. I like the subject matter. I think it was poorly done. It's also a very low budget movie. It's an indie.
You're not endorsing it.
I am not endorsing it. But the image of the astronaut face down on the moon with the Earth in the background, like crawling through the regolith, was my desktop background for a very long time. I had no idea what it was from until doing research for this episode. And that's why I watched this film.
Cool. That's awesome. So I have a bunch of found footage films that I want to just list out for people.
This is in no way a comprehensive list because there's literally hundreds or thousands.
Correct. And then there's
millions, maybe.
And then there's one final thing that I want to talk about that's not film, but it's near and dear to my heart.
James.
So let's start with the found footage films. So what I did was I went to Twitter and I asked people, what are your favorite found footage films? Because I knew there'd be ones people really cared about that you and I wouldn't think to include here. And I got so many responses. We couldn't possibly have watched them all, but I want to mention some of them in case people are looking for something new. So these are like Twitter suggested by horror fans for people.
Sure.
As Above, So Below, which we already knew. Wreck, Jerusalem, Alan. So that came up. A film called Final Prayer. Also a film that we watched, Hell House LLC, but we didn't talk too much about.
Oh, gosh.
It's a good one.
We're going to pause to talk about that just for 1 second.
Sure.
Just because it has the fun anecdote of before you and I were roommates.
Sure, if you could say we're roommates. It's romantic.
You and I used to watch movies simultaneously in different places.
Yeah.
We picked Hell House LLC because it sounded like a spooky haunted house movie. And you and I both got maybe 30 minutes into the film, 45, whatever, before we both agreed that it was too scary.
Yeah.
So I came over to your place so that we could finish the film together because it was too scary to watch solo.
You're being kind. I was really afraid, and I think you...
I was terrified.
Yeah, I think you were saying that.
I was chilling. What do you do when you chill? Something in your boots? Shaking?
Shaking
I was
your
shaking
boots?
in my boots.
Okay. So Hell House LLC, there's some sequels, but I think most people agree that they're not as good.
I would love to see a sequel.
All right, well, we can make that happen. Deadstream, also, again, recommended by my therapist, the Poughkeepsie tapes. Afflicted, Dolotov Pass Incident, Butterfly Kisses, The Den, Savage Land, Exhibit A, Alone with Her, Webcast, Deadware, Banshee Chapter, Found Footage 3D, which multiple people suggested, Cronewood, Antrim, Willow Creek, Host, Chernobyl Diaries, Grave Encounters, The Taking of Deborah Logan.
Wait,
Webcasting.
Chernobyl Diaries?
Chernobyl Diaries, yes.
Wasn't that the big show?
That was just Chernobyl.
Oh.
Webcast Again, Leaving DC, Murdered Death, Koreatown, S&M Man, Be My Cat, a film for Anne, The Blackwell Ghost, The House on Mansfield Street, Savage Land, Horror in the High Desert, again, Found Footage 3D, and somebody suggested Ghost Watch, which I'm not sure if it's technically, I guess it is technically found footage. Ghost Watch is a BBC program that they presented like on Halloween on BBC as if it was this paranormal investigation that was really happening, but it was staged.
I remember getting that for you. Did you watch it? Got the file for you and surprised you with it on a thumb drive.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah, I do remember that. So anyway, that's just, again, like there's just so many, and so many of those I had never heard of. So there's a ton.
Tell me more about Be My Cat.
That comes up like on almost every list of found footage, like best found footage, films that I've been perusing lately.
Is it
that
like
comes
America's
up a lot.
Funniest Home Videos?
No, why do you say that?
Because that's like a collection of funny home animal stuff.
Huh. I don't know.
Wait, why are you so suspicious?
Because the poster has like a guy on it who looks like the guy from Blue's Clues. So I didn't know if you had like seen the poster.
Blue's Clues?
Like it looks like that kind of guy.
Okay, it was hosted by Bob Saget.
Yeah, I know.
Blue's Clues.
I know. Whatever.
That's Steve.
I know. So let's transition away from horror films here and round it out with something a little special and near and dear to my heart.
The Sims.
Not a movie, but Marble Hornets had a big impact on my life for many years.
Marble Hornets?
Marble Hornets.
Fuck is that?
It's a YouTube web series, and it still exists. You can go watch it right now for anyone that wants to.
Okay. What is it?
The first video was published in 2009. It's a Slender Man found footage series that was started only 9 days after the original Slender Man photo was posted on the Something Awful forum, which is an incredibly fast turnaround.
Wow, we love a good Slenderman content.
There are almost 100 videos in the series, and there's several spin-off series and companion accounts. Like the first half of the videos have at least like a few million views each, and then people drop off after that because it's just so dense. But me and my friend Jess watched it.
Jess from Connecticut
for many years. And even when we weren't with each other, we would like watch it remote because each, the episodes range in length, but some of them are short. I was like a minute. They're kind of like labeled as entry 1, entry 2, entry 3 into this online, record of what's happening.
I see.
And it's clearly fiction, but it's still really scared me at the time when I was watching it. I haven't watched it recently.
So Jess from Connecticut is a Slenderman fan.
She's a Marble Hornets fan. I wouldn't say she's a Slenderman fan. You'd have to ask her that yourself. Overall, I typically really love the found footage genre. I think it lends itself so well to horror, especially low-budget filmmakers, which we connect with because we are. It's also like a really playful genre, I think, and it makes space for everyone. So it's interesting to kind of see it and have traced back this research, like the evolution from epistolary novels, like found letters, right, to home videos, things like the McPherson tape, to now like things like hosts, like Zoom recordings.
Freaking McPherson tape.
And, just I think a nod to how many found footage films there are and that are really good.
Billions.
We, on Patreon, as I'm sure a lot of you know, every month we have a bonus podcast for our patron supporters called Horror Movie Club, where we all vote on films and then we release a bonus episode about it. And this month we put out 4 found footage films to kind of be on theme with this series that we're doing on Lunatics Radio Hour. And we're in like a gridlock right now. Everybody is really tied on the voting. And Al and I were like, we might end up watching all of these movies because they all just seem so fun, and I have like optimistic hope for all of them.
VHS was on there, and at least we've already watched that one.
That's right.
So I hope that doesn't win, because then we have to do a whole other episode and rehash all the things we just said. But at least then we can go in depth with spoilers.
Oh, yeah, we will really go in on it then. So if anyone would like to join us this month over on Patreon to be part of that discussion, the link is in the description of this podcast. And I am so excited because, as expected, later in this month, we're going to be coming back to you with our next episode, which will be a Lunatics Library episode featuring epistolary horror short stories.
Oh.
Or just not all of them are short stories. Actually, they're all, I think, novels and longer works that we're taking excerpts from.
Very cool.
But I'm really excited. I think it's just such a fun horror writing exercise too.
Sure. Oh yeah, for sure.
That I'm really, really excited to present those later in this month.
Agreed.
As always, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your support. I hope you all had a lovely New Year. I really like the New Year season and fresh energy. So we're excited to be rested and back talking to you today. Stay spooky, stay safe, and we will talk to you soon.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks for listening. If you'd like some bonus content, consider supporting us on Patreon to access our patron-exclusive podcast, Horror Movie Club.
Also, head to lunaticsproject.com to check out our spooky merch and apparel.
You can find us at Lunatics Project on Twitter and TikTok, and The Lunatics Project on Instagram and YouTube, where you'll find our short horror films, cemetery tours, and so much more.
And please rate and review. A little feedback goes a long way to help us grow and get more content out there.
Our cover art is by Pilar Kep, and musical bumpers are by Michaela Papa and Jordan Moser.